So, if JFK hadn't been shot in November 1963, how might the future of America, indeed the world, have changed? Well, let's find out, shall we? Here are 19 reasons to read. 11, 22, 63. Hi everyone, welcome to my channel. I'm Dave Musson, at Dave Musson on Instagram, and this is a place where I'm taking you through the works of Stephen King and giving you 19 reasons to read each of his books. If that sounds like something you'd like more of, do click around the rest of my channel, see what you find, and consider hitting subscribe as well so you don't miss any videos in the future. We're up to 2011, which means we've still got quite a long way to go to get through King's career, and it means we are at one of the best things he has ever written. 11, 22, 63. So in this video, I'm going to give you 19 reasons to read this epic book, and I'm going to cluster all the spoilers together at the end as well. So if you haven't read it already, you can dodge those spoilers if you need to. But enough intro tractor. Let's get on with this. Here are 19 reasons to read the wonderful 11, 22, 63. So I've already mentioned this, but in case you've only got time for a quick in and out one reason, the one reason to read this book, it is quite simply one of the best things King has ever done. It is a page turner, it is gripping, it is full of heart, and it is a perfect read whether you've read one Stephen King, 50 Stephen King books, or even no Stephen King books. This is a novel I would quite literally recommend to anyone. And for Stephen King to have put that out 37 years into his publishing career at this point is pretty fucking impressive. I think you'll agree. So as you can see, this is a chunky book, nearly 900 pages, and yet there's barely a wasted moment. It might look daunting as a collection of papers to get through, but trust me, it's worth pretty much every moment. So this story has so much going on, which is why I am always confident recommending it to just about any sort of reader. At its heart is a historical fiction plot with a bit of time travel thrown in, but there's also swashbuckling adventure, drama, thriller, bits of horror as well, and on top of that, possibly the absolute greatest romance story that Stephen King has written in his entire career. Trust me, there's something for just about everyone. Like, what else do I need to do to convince you to read this book? The quality of this one clearly did shine through. This was King's best-selling novel in years, and it stayed on top of the New York Times bestseller list for 16 weeks. Deservedly so. So let's jump into the hook of this one. Main character is Jake Epping, a teacher from Maine, of course, and his friend Al, who owns the local diner. Now, it just so happens that in Al's diner, there's a little rabbit hole that allows him to go back to the 9th of September, 1958, which he's been doing regularly to go and buy cheap meat and then bring it back to the 2010s and sell his burgers at a very friendly rate. Then Al decides, actually, I'm going to use this opportunity to try and stop Kennedy being assassinated. But the thing is, when you interfere with the past doesn't like it too much, and it punishes Al by giving him cancer. So he comes back to the 2010s and tells Jake everything and sets Jake with the task of going back and saving Kennedy himself. So Jake goes back for a little bit and does a little test with somebody he knew, see how he could alter that guy's future, and then decides to take on the task himself and fully commits to the JFK mission. The only problem is, he's got 5 years to kill before Dallas 1963, and that's why this book is so chunky, because we get to see exactly what Jake gets up to along the way. So one of the big plot devices that I love about this is what I already mentioned about how the past can realise that you're trying to mess with it and will do what it can to stop you. It's why Al gets cancer, and some of the things that happen to Jake across his time in the past are just quite ridiculous and quite unexpected. You never know when the past is going to sneak around the corner and bosh Jake in the face. Now this is a time travel story, and one of the things that can overcomplicate time travel stories are the rules of time travel. But King does a great job of setting out his rules early on and then just moving on from them. So the rabbit hole only ever takes you back to the 9th of September 1958, just before midday. And regardless of how long you stay in the past, when you go back up through the rabbit hole, only 2 minutes will have passed. And you can wipe out anything that you do in the past simply by going back through the rabbit hole again and resetting everything. Now, King also addresses the classic time travel adventure question of, well, what would happen if I killed my granddad? Jake explicitly asks it of Al, who just says, well, why would you do that? Yeah, fair enough. King gets these done, gets them out of the way, and then moves on and focuses on the story, which is an incredible story. So this is an idea King actually first had back in 1971 when he just started work as a teacher and he just sold a couple of short stories. He made an attempt at it but realised he didn't have the time or resources to research this properly, and so left it in his ideas box for many, many years. Fast forward to the 2000s and he got his actual own research assistant, a guy named Russ Dorr, who he set working away on this, and finally we got the story. And yes, it was worth the wait. So rather like in Back to the Future, the moment Jake goes back to 1958 and experiences the sights, the smells, the tastes, the cheap prices, the vivid colours, everything about it, he's hooked, and so you will be too. Even for someone like me who's not old enough to be nostalgic for the 50s, the way King paints it just makes you want to be there. And hey, it's a lot better than thinking about the shit show that is 2022, right? So Jake eventually ends up in the little Texas town of Jody, where he settles into life as a high school teacher and he meets the love of his life, the new librarian, Sadie Dunhill. And it's Jake and Sadie's story that is really at the heart of 11/22/63. It's one for the ages. So you might think that having to hang around with the character for 5 years would be a bit of a chore, but it really isn't. Jake's life in Sadie is excellent. There's loads of stuff going on and you will keep wanting to come back for more. And of course, Jake eventually has to start keeping an eye on one Lee Harvey Oswald. And I think King does a really good job of weaving in those facts about Lee Harvey Oswald into his own story. I think if King wanted to do more historical fiction, this shows he could absolutely nail it. So some of the ways in which the past interferes with Jake's efforts are just heart-thumping. You just never know what's around the corner, like I said earlier, and it just keeps you on your toes and on the edge of your seat all the way through, no matter how serene a scene you're reading at that moment. When is the past going to step in? Okay, it's time to enter spoiler territory, so if you want to drop out here, please do so, and I will see you again very soon. Okay, so let's go back to the first part of Jake's adventure, his little test run, which involves him spending time in a little place called Derry. Yep, Derry from It. And if you've read that book, when Jake goes to Derry, it will send shivers of delight and terror down your spine. You'll be pleased to know that Derry is still a fucking awful place, but you also get the bonus of Jake bumping into Bev and Richie. Beep beep. If you like sex, you will enjoy this book. There is a lot of sex, mainly between Jake and Sadie, who refer to it as pound cake. Yeah, lol. So one of the biggest interventions the past makes during Jake's life in Jody is the introduction of Sadie's psycho ex-husband, who, let's just say, is all kinds of violent and terrifying. So there's a couple of King connections for you. The first car Jake buys himself back in the 50s is a red and white Plymouth Fury. Remind you of anyone, maybe? And when Jake comes back to the future, having stopped the Kennedy assassination, and he, well, discovers that actually that probably wasn't the right thing to do because we're now in a post-apocalyptic mess. He learns that a huge nuclear reactor exploded, destroying much of Maine and New England on the 19th of June 1999, which is of course the date that Stephen King in real life was hit by a minivan while out for a walk. In fact, the alternative future is one of the most fascinating parts of this. It kind of is a crushing realization for Jake that, you know, sometimes you shouldn't be messing with the past. Sometimes dead is better. So finally, a word on the ending, which will warm your soul and cheer your heart. And a lot of the credit for it actually has to go to King's son, Joe Hill, who suggested something a bit more upbeat because the original ending was a bit more downbeat. Yeah, it's a little bit cheesy, yeah, it's a little bit predictable, but it's also magnificent. There we go, 19 Reasons to Read 11/22/63. Let me know what you think of this chunky book in the comments, and let me know how much you love Jake and Sadie's relationship too. If you liked this and you want more, click around my channel, there's plenty for you to explore, and consider hitting subscribe as well so you don't miss any in the future. And if you want to come and chat 11/22/63 or other King stuff on Instagram, I'm at Dave Musson, always happy to talk. Next time, we're going back into the Dark Tower universe, so I'll see you for that.